All set.
Thank you. It looks like we're just waiting on Mr. Marks. Well, it's 5 o'clock, and I don't think he'll mind missing the remote meeting script. So maybe I'll get through that, and then hopefully he joins us. So let's open here. This is Arthur Gasparo, Chair of the Nantucket Airport Commission. I will call to order the November 9th meeting and start with the virtual meeting statement. Public participation guidelines. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. The town reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or accent appropriately. As a preliminary matter, this is Arthur Gasparo, Nantucket Airport Commission Chairman. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda and are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ms. Topham?
Here.
Mr. Buscarin?
Here.
Ms. Planzer?
Here.
Mr. Marks?
Here.
And staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ms. Perales?
Here.
Ms. Sansbury?
Here.
Mr. Carberg?
Here.
And Mr. Rafter?
Here.
And Ms. Sylvia?
Here.
And then anticipated speakers on the agenda, Mr. Laston?
Here.
Okay. Good evening. This open meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. This meeting will be aired at a later time on the Town of Nantucket YouTube channel. Please note this meeting is being recorded and all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for the effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or my computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait till I yield the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. And with that, we will move to the number 2 on our agenda, which is to review and approve the agenda. Are there any questions, concerns, or additions for the agenda as published? Hearing none, we'll consider that adopted by unanimous consent. We have the minutes for draft minutes for the meeting of October 12th, 2021. Any questions, concerns, or corrections? Is there a motion to adopt the minutes of the October 12th?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We have next to ratify the warrants of October 20th and November 3rd. Is there a motion to do so?
I'll make that motion.
And is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Any further discussion on the warrants? Hearing none. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
Ms. Planzer,
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Next, we have public comment for any items which are not otherwise on the agenda. Please feel free to raise your hand using the Zoom or speak up, and I'll acknowledge you if you have a public comment. I'm not seeing any. We'll move on to pending leases and contracts as set forth on Exhibit 1, which is incorporated by reference, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Rafter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item we have is a contract with Greenwood Emergency Vehicles for $11,921.41. That's for a new fire pump for one of our fire trucks. And the next item is a contract amendment with McFarland Johnson, Inc. for $352,060 or $600. And that is an amendment number 3 to EN01 for the water line extension services, construction administration services, construction site services, additional scope, public involvement, and the SRS application with the state. They're the 2 items we have this evening.
Are there any questions, concerns, or comments regarding the 2 pending contracts? Is there a motion to approve said contracts?
I'll make a motion.
I'll
Is there-
second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Topham,
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
Ms. Planzer,
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thank you. Moving on to pending matters. Well, I think we're going to be able to take it off of this. I will turn it over to Mr. Rafter for some good news.
I thought it was complete, but according to the newspaper, our home rule petition, we were informed late yesterday, was passed by the House, but apparently it now has to go through the Senate for consideration. And either way, though, it's very timely because we were just informed recently that the FAA's grant application deadline has been moved up from May 1st to April 11th. So we're hoping that this is wrapped up very shortly here and we can take it off the agenda, and it's going to be desperately needed. It also may be a major benefit to any new funding that may be coming out of Washington with the new bill that they're circulating. So we're hoping to get this wrapped up finally, but great news we received yesterday that it did go through the House. So.
Terrific.
Thank you, Mr. Rafter. Does anybody have any questions or wish to discuss the home rule petition? Hearing none, we'll move on to the PFAS investigation update.
I'm going to turn this over to Noah and go ahead, Noah. Instead of the template, we're going forward with the interim status report.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 4 items for you. And at the end of this, I'd like to hand over to Mr. Laston for a 5-minute review of the water main project and schedule. As Tom mentioned, in lieu of the PFAS status activity table, we have an interim status report in the packet. You may recall when the IRA updates went from monthly to biannually, the commission requested an interim report in the empty items. So there were, in essence, quarterly updates. And it's this interim report that's attached to the packet. The major items that report reviews are the routine POET and drinking water monitoring. All of the POET systems are performing within standard. The performance monitoring of the fuel farm GAC or granulated activated carbon system, which is performing as it should. Monitoring results from the irrigation wells. That data is summarized, but very briefly, the Delta Field wells test clean. The parking lot irrigation wells, which are downstream from, are similar to the wells they're downstream from. So PFAS was detected in those wells, which isn't a surprise. There's no public contact concerns with using those wells for for the irrigation purpose. There are soil delineation results. New data is presented for the sand pit area, which is one of our historical AFFF release sites. And the document details the subsurface utility location work that was performed in advance of our groundwater sampling. The groundwater sampling task order, we're about halfway through it. We're 10 days into the 3-week project duration for that. So Weston and Drillex are on site performing groundwater sampling and well installation as we speak. Moving on to bottled water, there's a handout in your packet for your review and adoption. And Mr. Chair, I believe a vote is needed to adopt this policy. But as we discussed last month with the redlined documents, we've revised our water service policy to specify the continued provision of bottled water until the water services and the water main is commissioned adjacent to the airport. I don't know if
Does
that's something
anybody
you'd
have
like to take now.
Questions for Mr. Carberg? I'm hearing none. Would you like to turn it over to Mr. Lasden at this point?
Actually, Mr. Chair, I think we need a motion and a vote on adopting that water service policy, and then I'll have 2 more items on my report.
Are there any questions on the policy that the commission has received? It was the version, as Mr. Carberg said, that we saw last month, redlined, and this is the finalized version. If there are no questions, is there a motion to adopt the policy as drafted?
I make a motion to adopt the policy as drafted.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
The motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. How do you vote, Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Back to you, Mr. Carberg.
Okay, thank you. For an update on the water service project, I'm glad to bring you some very good news on this item. Robert B. Auer, through McFarland Johnson, has provided competitive private side excavation and plumbing estimates for the group of homes on Nobadeer and Evergreen Way area. And then Holgate Longfin has scheduled public side excavation through the Wannacomet Water Company. And work is scheduled to begin the week of November 15th. And I'd like to just step back and provide context that we've worked very diligently on this project. It's not one that the state procurement ever anticipated, with the government being this involved in private side work. It's taken a lot of patience and multiple parties to get to this point. So I wanted to make sure that I thanked Mark and Wannacomet Water Company, Brian in the finance department, Robert B. Auer and Holgate Longfin for working together. Typically, it would be a 1 company job on both sides of the curb stop, but they've worked together. And last but not least, the affected homeowners for their patience. So we're hoping for a quick completion with no unknown site conditions. As a reminder, the airport will pay the first $1,000 worth of water bills through an on-bill credit. Ultimately, we look forward to the residents, moving on to their everyday lives with a minimum of disruption. And if there are any challenges that come up, we're committed to completing and resolving those issues. And then for the water main project, I'll refer to Rich Laston in a minute. The only items that I did want to mention is that work will start on November 22nd, I believe, even though it's a short Thanksgiving week. Work will be starting at Skyline and moving east, and we're working through all the coordination now with notices in the paper to affected residents, whether they're receiving a curb stop or a full water service package, and coordinating that work with them. Robert B. Auer will perform additional coordination with residents on the section of Skyline Drive between Webster Road and the cul-de-sac. Because of some site conditions, that trenching will have to happen down the middle of the road. So Robert B. Auer will coordinate directly with those residents to be sure that they're out of their driveway before the work begins, that they can park and walk back to their homes in the midday if they have to, and that work is clear and passable at the end of the day. That will be about a 2-day duration. With that being said, Rich, can I turn it over to you for a presentation on all the other good stuff?
You pretty much stole everything I was going to talk about.
Well, I wanted to take the good parts.
So yes, as Mr. Carberg indicated, the No Badir Way homes are being started next week. Robert B. Auer will be doing the private side connection to the water main installation in their house and coordinating with the plumbing. And No Badir is doing the public side work, so there's some coordination necessary. They'll be coming back to the people twice, once to put their pipe through their yard, and then after the town completes the curb stop and the testing that's required, they'll come back and do the plumbing interior to their homes. There are some homes in that area that requested to keep their wells, so there is some additional plumbing that has to be done on the homes that wanted to keep their wells for irrigation purposes. And then for the main water line project, they are starting the 22nd, which is Thanksgiving week, as Mr. Carberg indicated, starting on Skyline Drive, and then working their way across the airfield and then over to MVR will be the last piece they will construct. We had a meeting last week, a pre-construction meeting with on airport discussions and the FAA to talk about impacts to nav aids and night work at the airport and how that's going to be coordinated across the airfield. And then we will have one follow-up meeting with the public safety representatives on the island. MVR will be closed for night work for construction, but we've arranged with public safety in the airport for public safety to use the airport perimeter road and access gates if they have to go around the construction site to get to one of those homes. We know of at least one homeowner out on MVR that's living there still and lives there full time. So it was important for us to understand how we were going to let those homeowners get back and forth to their homes, and it's important to how to handle public safety if necessary. So that was the arrangements that we've made for public safety around the construction site. I guess any questions, I'd be happy to entertain questions.
Does anybody have any questions?
No,
Okay, anything further, Mr. Lasden, or did that wrap it up?
That pretty much wraps up the project. It's gone slow because of supply chain concerns. But hopefully once they get out there and get started, things will wrap up and get moving, and we'll get this done as soon as we can.
Great. I know I saw some guys out putting some marks for dig safe, and they're clearly, getting ramped up.
Yep.
Does anybody have anything further they'd like to ask Mr. Lasden or Mr. Carberg or discuss considering the water main extension project?
I just
Gary.
like to thank them both for their hard work in all of this and perseverance.
Thank you. Hearing nothing further, we will move on. I think, Mr. Lasden, unless I'm mistaken and there's something else that you are on, you're of course more than welcome to stay, but I'll leave it at your discretion.
Thank you.
Okay.
Before he goes, I'd like to also echo Commissioner Topham's thanks to Noah and Rich for a great job. This is a major milestone in this overall PFAS remediation project, and I think it's a great step forward. So thanks to both of you too.
Agreed. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Rafter. We have, or I suppose I could just make the announcement. The next item on the agenda is that we have a rates and charges public hearing proposed for January 11th, 2022. And my understanding is we might have something to look at for the next meeting. Is that correct, Mr. Rafter?
Yes, if I may, Mr. Chair, we'll have a draft to the commission for the next meeting with the proposed changes, but I wanted to get it on everybody's radar screen and just let you know the main focus is there'll be a change in the format of our rates and charges. And we're going to be looking at primarily addressing the evolution of our market with increased seasonal service. So the commercial air carrier side of the house is going to be the primary focus. There will be some other changes, but just wanted everybody to be aware of that and have it on your radar.
Thank you. Anything further on rates and charges or anything anybody wants to see in particular incorporated to the draft? All right, we'll look forward to that draft, Mr. Rafter, and have some further discussion, perhaps at next month's meeting, and get set up for the public hearing in January. Next is an update of the minimum standards as related to airport storage siding and lighting requirements. To you, Mr. Rafter.
Yeah, this is a minimum. This is a minor update to our minimum standards. We uncovered a couple of items during the development of the hangars that are being proposed, and we just wanted to make sure that the minimum standards were updated regarding the dark skies policy and signage on the hangar that's required.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns with the draft updates that were within our packet? Is there a motion to adopt the proposed revisions to the minimum standards?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Topham,
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
Ms. Planzer,
Aye.
Mr. Marks.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. I would just add one follow-up comment, which I think it would be helpful if, once these are all updated and cleaned up, if we could get them posted somewhere on our website. I would think that it would be good to have those standards available. Thank you. Moving on to the declaration of surplus property at 10 Sun Island Road. Mr. Rafter.
Yeah, this is the first step in the issuance of an RFP, the declaration of surplus property. This is a long, narrow sliver adjacent to the our Sun Island Road parcel and behind the boat storage facility. So again, the first step before we can issue the RFP is declaration of surplus property. And that's what's before you this evening.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding the declaration of the surplus property?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Marks.
Is it 43,000 acres?
No, I'm assuming it's 43,000 square feet, which would be
That's what I thought.
1
So it
acre.
looks like we need to update that then.
Thank you.
It says 43,560 plus minus acres in item 1, line 1.
So 1 acre.
Yep.
Thank you for catching that. Anybody else, anything further? Is there a motion to declare 10 Sun Island Road as surplus property?
I'll move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? How do you vote, Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thank you. Moving on to finance and Mr. Rafter, or I don't know if you want me to go directly to Ms. Sansbury. Leave it to you.
No, I'll try to do this, and if I mess it up, she'll jump in and correct me. But first, I want to give Jamie credit because it was not an easy year, as it never is for a budget. But given the fact with the pandemic and what the history is and what the projection is going to be, it was very difficult. But she's been very successful at preparing another balanced budget with our usual application of $400,000 from the PFC account. I would like to note that our FY21 actual net earnings were $2.6 million, and we're still waiting. We're waiting to hear from the town on what our retained earnings were for the past year. So we did very well in FY21. On the revenue side of the house, we're looking at about an 11% decrease over FY21 actual, but a 36% increase over this year's FY22 budget. Again, we're conservative, but trying to guess, or not guess, but forecast where we're going to be. So with the history of the pandemic, that was very difficult. We're projecting a PFC revenue stream of about $450,000. And you can see we still have our stabilization fund, our PFC fund, and our fuel revolver account. We are going to look to increase the fuel revolver this year up to 5 million. And I believe we're probably going to maintain that for FY23, barring any crazy circumstances of significant continued increase in price or anything. So that's one thing that we're monitoring. Some of the major expenses in the line items, many of these were looked at using a 3-year average, again, because of the impact of the pandemic. The administration salary includes a standard, what is normally referred to as a cost of living, as well as 2 previously approved increases for 2 administrative personnel. The Barnstable retirement system is up there, but that's provided to us by town. You'll see a significant increase in professional services of $248,000. And while a portion of that is for PFAS-related legal costs, much of it is associated with service and preventative maintenance contracts for things like the PA system, the flight information display systems, the A2 analytics, our cybersecurity that we're going to be embarking on. A product that we have now called Go Apron Gate Management. We're automating the gate management so NOAA doesn't have to continuously do these spreadsheets. And I would say that the objective here is to do preventative and routine maintenance rather than wait for systems to become outdated and crashed and then have to put significant dollars into it. So that's what the major expense increase is on the line items. As I mentioned, we're going to look to increase the fuel revolver cap, but our total expenses are only increasing by about 7%. So I think, again, Jamie's done a wonderful job with this budget. She has been building it for a number of years now, consolidating different accounts, putting things where they really belong, and it should be commended. So as I said, we don't have retained earnings, and I haven't even seen the fourth quarter report from last year's, but our numbers are looking pretty strong for the end of the year. This is the draft, and we would be looking for a vote at next month's meeting. And we're glad to take any questions or comments, any input.
Thank you, Mr. Rafter. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns with the draft budget?
Yes, I got a question. Why is the finance department projected budget for 2023 7.6 million and Rafter's proposed budget more than 10 million? There's a huge disparity there.
If you notice, it's the same as the budget they had for FY22, which was redone, I'll say mid-pandemic, if you will. But then if you look at the actual, Tony, for 21, you'll see it's up around the 11 million. So theirs is, for lack of a better term, a pretty straight, simple formula where they just copy the prior year. And there's no real detailed thought process going into it. Jamie looks and analyzes each and every one of our revenue accounts. And if you look at the detail on the revenue page, you'll see she has every one of those. She has reviewed and has comments on. Again, most of it was looked at over a 3-year period because of the impact of the pandemic. Others were information provided to us from outside sources, but she goes through this line by line, and I bank on her numbers. And that's the main difference, Commissioner.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Buscarin?
Yes, thank you.
And I will add, I find the notes in the spreadsheet very helpful. It saves me asking questions. And I'm also happy to see on the parking, the revenue, the projected revenue increasing based on bringing it back in-house. I think that's great.
I think I'm going to keep my fingers crossed, but I think we're conservative there too.
Anybody else, anything further on the draft budget? Hearing nothing further, thank you both very much. And we'll look forward to the final budget next month. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Rafter for his report.
Thank you. On the project side of the house, taxiway echo work for this phase is completed. There's one more phase to be done. That should be accomplished in the spring of 2022. The security phase 2 contractor, I saw them back on site today. They're going to be installing some new automatic doors on the front of the terminal. And there's some gate openers that they're doing some automation on. The fuel farm rehabilitation, temporary farm has been put in place and is operational. The skids for the new farm are due in January, and we're still anticipating a January, February completion date. It could go into March, but we still have enough room in our schedule for that. Runway 1230 decommissioning was originally anticipated to be completed using a contractor from Taxiway Echo. However, they declined the work. And so now we're regrouping and we're going to meet with the consultant to explore additional alternatives and see what we can do with FA and possibly get it done in the next phase of Taxiway Echo or look at it as a separate project. The crew quarters housing project, we're in the process of developing a scope of work for an architect. And I'd like to ask the chair or commission to identify a liaison or representative to be a liaison to the commission as we work through this process. There's a lot of moving parts to it, as you all know, from the site and what we'd like to do with that to the rules of the road, whether it's going to be a stick build or it's going to be a prefab. So I don't know if there's anyone that has a particular interest, but I think a smooth way to proceed with this would be to have a representative from the commission that we could work directly with and then report back to the commission monthly on progress and get the input from the rest of the commissioners as we proceed, rather than just making freelance decisions, staff doing it that way. So if that meets your approval, Mr. Chairman, that's what I'd like to ask if possible.
Thanks, Mr. Rafter. I think I would put it out to the commission for discussion as to if the collective choice would be to have a single liaison working with the staff, or whether you feel it would be better that we maintain a subcommittee type approach where the staff then puts out several options and then the subcommittee makes the recommendations. I think we could do either or. I think the liaison is likely less cumbersome for the staff in terms of moving things along a little more expeditiously, but I do think that's a discussion that we should have ourselves in terms of which way you may want to proceed with this.
If I may, Mr. Chair, excuse me, but it may be a combination too, where a liaison is identified for the routine daily, for lack of a better term, work, and then it is taken to a subcommittee, for a broader consensus building, and then to the final commission. But that's, again, however you'd like to do it, just food for thought.
That's fine. That's fine with me. That's sort of a hybrid type approach, and then a subcommittee full discussion, if you will, as to what comes to the commission for the type of housing that we're going to proceed with. Does that make sense to everybody, or have any thoughts or ideas on that?
Makes sense.
Anyone interested in being the liaison?
So we'll jump at once.
I'll be the liaison.
Uh,
I was going to recommend Mr. Marks.
Mr. Buscarin, I saw your hand go up as well. Are you interested, or would you rather defer to Mr. Marks? Or
I'd like the job, but if he wants to do it, that's fine. I'll defer to Mr. Marks.
Okay. Ms. Planzer, are you fine with that?
I'm fine with that.
All right, it looks like the job is yours, Mr. Marks, and then if you want to work with staff as they need it and stay up to date and, and we probably won't want to get too far ahead of ourselves without having, some options and fine tuning it a bit. And then probably, I think a subcommittee, I don't have the list in front of me for which is the most appropriate for this, but we can, we'll leave that to you guys to work out. And then bring it forward. And we don't necessarily have to wait for the next commission meeting unless you want to, whenever you feel it's time to have a subcommittee meeting, you can pull that together too.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
I do think it's important. We try to advance this.
Yeah.
Back to you, Mr.
I'm sorry.
Rafter.
Yeah, I have a couple more things on the hangar development. We're continuing negotiations with Mr. Turner for Turner Construction Hangars. The Hagedorn hangar, we had a meeting with their contractor and engineer to clarify some items and review their alteration application. And their project is anticipated to be completed by March. The Exhibit A project, we're working with Mr. Lasden on that. We found some various documents in our basement files and we're going to be updating that, but it's, as I mentioned before, it's going to be leading to another cleanup project of a lot of land issues that we have. So on the RFP and bids side of the house, the IFB maintenance contract for a security system, we had a meeting with MJ on that to go over what our desires are for that maintenance contract. The RFQ for the OPM or owner's project manager is for the terminal space optimization. We have selected CHA and we're in the process of negotiating a contract with them. The RFP for car rentals is out and available to the public. Proposals are due on December 3rd. Also on December 3rd, we have the HVAC terminal projects that are due. It's currently on the street. We also have an OPM for the housing project. An RFP is being developed, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to have someone designated we can work directly with. So thank you. On the operations side of the house, you may recall we had an issue with some fuel supply. We have a meeting set up tomorrow with the Steamship Authority to explore possible improvements to our supply chain for fuel. We're working, our IT consultant, Skylar Poole, is working closely with the town and on cybersecurity, looking to obtain a monitoring service as well as an analysis. NOAA is continuing to work with the town energy coordinator of potential solar electric opportunities as we've had some ground handling companies express interest in the electric vehicle use. And we're hearing that there's a number of things coming down the pike on the energy side. We're also monitoring the infrastructure bill and the impacts it may have on ACK. There's possibility of approximately $1.4 to $1.5 million a year for 5 years, and that there's possibly some PFAS cleanup funding may be available in there. So we're monitoring. I shouldn't say we. McFarland's doing a very good job of monitoring that for us, and they keep us apprised of all the updates. So that's great news. September statistics, I again don't want to get into detail, but I just want to remind everyone things are going very well. And again, when I counted up, we had 16 nonstop destinations to at least 7 and I believe 8 major hubs, which for our airport is absolutely amazing. So the details are in your packet, but everybody did very well this summer, and we're hearing some things that there might be some slight increases for next summer. So, but a quick summary on the fuel for September was up 54.7% and up 48.8% year to date. For October, it's up 10.1%, 10.2%. On the avgas side, it's up 10.4% for September and 19.8% year to date. October's up 8.8%. Freight continues to climb and doing well, up 34.33%. Noise complaints have dropped, so a lot of good activity happening, but I could sit here and run through all these numbers, but I don't want to bore you too much with that. On the personnel report, we have a new customer service representative in the FBO, Claudia McFarland. We welcome her. Fiona Johnson, who was a customer service rep in the FBO, has been moved over to the receptionist position. And we offered the administrative assistant position that will be backfilling for Lillian to Boyana Stoikova Nelson, and she is scheduled to begin next week. We've also posted the compliance manager position to backfill the position that Mr. Sylvia is vacating. He's currently he's filling two roles as the security coordinator and compliance manager. And one last item under personnel. As you all know, the airport staff worked extremely hard since the beginning of the pandemic at keeping the airport operational and providing uninterrupted quality service to our public. They responded rapidly to the initial pandemic by making necessary provisions to accommodate passengers and protect staff in a safe manner. However, in addition, they've gone above and beyond in many, many ways, such as handling significant passenger increases and pumping record amounts of fuel, as I just gave you some of those numbers. Performing these tasks with approximately 16% less full-time staff and even less seasonal staff due to the COVID-19 pandemic. They ensured continuation of on schedule of three major projects valued at about $30 million, a security job, taxiway echo, and fuel farm rehabilitation. They did this all in the midst of a PFAS remediation program, which is in some ways more significant than COVID, and I would kind of say it's our second pandemic. However, based on all this above, the above and beyond performance resulting in significant return on investment to the airport, unless there's an objection, I'll be taking the appropriate actions to award a one-time performance reward of $1,500 per full-time employee, with the exception of the airport manager, understanding that this may need to be negotiated with some bargaining units. The estimated total for this action is approximately $50,000. So if there's no objections, I'll be moving forward with that. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Sounds like a good plan, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Rafter. Any other questions, comments, concerns with Mr. Rafter's report? Hearing none, we'll move on to commissioners' comments. Any commissioners have any comments for items that were not otherwise on the agenda or for future agenda items? Hearing none, we will move on back to public comment. Is there any members of the public that have any comments for items that were either on the agenda or otherwise? Seeing and hearing none, I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session per general law, chapter 30A, section 21A, to review the executive session minutes enumerated on the agenda for possible release, as well as the minutes of October 12, 2021 for review and possible release. And per clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, where the chair has determined that an open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the Airport Commission. Is there such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
The motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you all very much. We'll ask the members of the public and staff who are not staying on for executive session. Bye, Lily. Thank you. Hope things are going well.
See you later.